let's settle in to begin our practice. And I really welcome you to take some time for some movement, for some getting the willies out, looking around. To give yourself a sense of place, of being here in this space. I'm just dropping in with a couple of breaths. And invite you to begin by thinking about your intention, your motivation for being here this evening. And perhaps this intention is something you can think about as we go through our meditation. You can reflect on it. And as we begin our meditation, I invite you to bring your attention inward, to close the eyes if that's what feels right to you, but you may leave them open or just gaze downward. And I like to begin my meditation by inviting in those that support me and have them accompany me through this meditation. I often do some leaning from side to side and envisioning that on either side of me, I'm supported by friends and loved ones. I'm supported by those of us who practice together. Supported by this community and this Sangha. And likewise, we can move a little bit forward and back. Remembering that we come to this moment and to this practice with the support and help and the teachings of our ancestors, Buddhist teachers, thousands of years. Imagining our ancestors holding us up and supporting us, giving us what we need to be in this moment. They say we're made for these times. We bring to this moment our own experience, our own skills, and all of this holds us up. And we might imagine the ancestors leading us forward, offering their experience, those that have come before us, holding out a hand that can help to guide us. Resourced by all of these ancestors, benefactors, loved ones. Taking a few deep breaths. With an intentional exhale that allows us to relax and release. Give ourselves over to gravity. Releasing the tension in the head and neck and shoulders. Feeling the weight and volume of our arms, our torso. Feeling our contact with our seat or cushion. That sense of being held. Perhaps it's pressure, the weight of the body in contact with the earth and our seat, our feet. Giving ourselves over to that sense of being held. In this more relaxed and settled posture, taking the time to just be aware of what's arising, what's passing through. This might be thoughts or sensations, feelings, noticings. Just inquiring what's arising. And noticing the response. And if we find ourselves distracted or running after stories in the mind, we can just remind ourselves to ease into that sense of gravity, feeling that sense of contact with the earth, relaxing into this space and time. While sensations offer just arise and pass through our awareness, like clouds passing through the sky. At times, we can feel as though something is really calling for our attention. And we may choose to inquire into that, to get curious about what it's all about. So we can try that now. And if you would choose to just continue with your silent meditation, feel free to allow my voice to just go in the background. Just be a gentle reminder that we're here together. But you can go about your sitting. But if you're finding that something is coming up, perhaps something that is sort of between you and being able to relax, something that's an annoyance, a disturbance, something you'd like to look into a bit. I invite you to pay attention, to notice. Just notice what it is that's arising, perhaps something you could describe in a few words. It could be a worry, it could be a plan, perhaps something we're annoyed or angry about. Not something major, but something perhaps that we can just look into a bit as we inquire. And it might be good to ask, does it feel okay to explore this? And am I able to handle that right now? And if so, let's pause and inquire and ask, what is this sense of dissatisfaction? And can I feel it in my body? Is there a felt sense of how it feels when I think of this, when I pay attention to this? How does it make me feel? We might notice whether there's any tension or clenching, a heaviness, a tightness of breath. Oftentimes the body can feel this dissatisfaction in the core of the body. And spending a little time to allow it to form, perhaps grow bigger. Notice if it might change, get larger or fade away. And we might inquire, is there a feeling word that describes this? What feeling comes to mind? And if that's not quite right, is there another word that better describes it? And do you have a sense of what this is all about? It can sometimes be helpful to place a hand on the part of the body that we're in touch with. And just getting a sense of what this is all about. Perhaps what's beneath it. And we might ask ourselves, how does this want me to be with it? Does it need attention, kindness, and care? Does it move me to action? Can I be accepting, allowing, and kind in my reactions to how I'm feeling? And when I offer compassion, does anything shift inside? And just calling upon our own innate wisdom. Is there any advice I have to give myself right now? And acknowledging with gratitude our willingness to be with this experience and to consider how can I best nurture myself in our remaining time sitting. Allowing the breath to flow through and soothe our bodies from the inside and the outside. Feeling held by the earth where we're seated or lying down, our feet in contact with the earth. allowing the breath to return to its normal pace. Allowing our awareness to expand to include all that's arising and passing away in our awareness. Recalling our benefactors, our ancestors, our loved ones, our friends and Sangha members, all who support us, and allowing their presence to sit with us as we take in this experience of being here now in these difficult times. Remembering that we're supported on our right side, our left side, behind us and ahead. And when we conclude our practice, we like to gather and remember all of the goodness, the insights, the self-care. These are the merits of our practice, the results. And our intention is to share these merits, our compassion, our care, with one another, with our community, and with beings across the world. Seeing if we can remember that at the very same time, there are people sharing the merits of their practice. People finishing their meditation, Buddhists across the world, Christians saying prayers, people who are sending compassion and peace and ease to us. So sharing our goodwill and feeling the goodwill that's flowing to us. Just riding that stream of mutual goodwill. That loving kindness. And noticing how it feels inside to share this goodwill and to receive it. May we be safe. May we be happy. And may we be well. Thank you for your practice. Hi. Nice to see your faces coming back. Thank you for sitting together. Good to see everyone who's here. So we're going to take a very short break. Normally when we're together at UU, we have a cookie break, but perhaps tonight we can just take like a 5-minute break, move our bodies, get comfortable, and come back. Let's see, before 7:45. And we'll get comfortable again and finish our evening together. So sometimes I think of folks, particularly when we're just getting started with meditation, that we can have this sense of you sit down to do your meditation. Sorry, I'm just going to change my focus here so that I'm not looking at myself, and I want to put everybody on gallery view. That helps me. Thank you. So sit down to do your meditation, and sometimes there can be this sense of, okay, so now what do I do? I'm here. Now what am I supposed to do? Sometimes it seems as though we're guided to sit with our thoughts, but sometimes we're guided to let the thoughts go. And it can be hard sometimes to know when we should make an effort and when we should just let things flow. Well, tonight I may not have any answers, but it's my intention to share with you some questions that might be helpful faced with this. So we have the agency, we have the ability to decide what we need in practice. And there's a time for effortless, choiceless awareness where we just allow our awareness to see what's flowing through. But then sometimes there's a time when our mind could use some direction, particularly when we want to settle down, when we first start practicing, when we want to investigate, or when we want to explore the wisdom of some of the teachings. So in each stage of practice, we can use inquiry or investigation or just curiosity. The question, what's going on here? What's really going on here? And it can be a powerful way to cultivate skillful meditation practice. So as we settle into practice, as we did tonight, questions can just help us tap into our motivation, our intention, or they can help us focus our attention. We often begin with mundane questions, like focusing our attention on an anchor, like the breath or sounds. And we might ask, is my breath long or is my breath short? And it can be sort of a boring question, but it invites us to tune into watching just that thing, the breath. And when we do, we often find that we settle down. We settle down into a calm abiding. But then as we get more settled and more concentrated, we often turn to inquiry to investigate our experience, maybe to investigate what we're believing and tap into what wisdom we have from the teachings. So these inquiries can help us to look deeper and to uncover what's below that line of awareness. We're always aware of the things that are distracting us, keeping us busy, but sometimes we forget to look at those things that are below that line of awareness, what's driving us, how are we really feeling? So when we routinely go about our day, we might just observe this train of thoughts and feelings and our stories and never look beneath to see what's driving us. But if we want to get real, we may want to pause and to inquire and basically have a conversation with our own inner wisdom rather than continuing to function from these stories and unexamined beliefs. The poet Elizabeth Lesser says, "Remove the veils so I might see what is really happening here and not be intoxicated by my stories and my fears." I love that. Or Byron Katie's version is, "You're either attaching to your thoughts or you're inquiring." So when we're not looking into them, it might grab onto them. And I'm going to ask if folks could just check to see if you're muted. We might have a little background information or background noise going on. So how do you use inquiry to remove these veils of our habitual thinking? I recently had the opportunity to retreat with Natural Dharma Fellowship. Phil DuPont was there, so was Bev and Teresa and David. And Camille Hikes, a teacher there at the Natural Dharma Fellowship, said the desire to inquire into your experience, heartfelt inquiry, means that you really want to know what's going on. The most compassionate stance that you can take is a willingness to look into yourself. People don't make the effort to do inner work if they don't want to be real. And isn't that why many of us are here? Don't we really want to be real and to see things as they are and hold them with kindness? So this heartfelt inquiry, it's pausing, allowing time to get in touch with our experience in the present moment. It resists turning away from things that are difficult. And we allow ourselves to feel the feelings, to think the thoughts, and to digest them in the body and in the heart and in the mind. So for these teachings that we read about, these Buddhist teachings, we can read them, but until we integrate them into our lives, they're really not going to have a whole lot of meaning for us. So we often need to engage in inquiry that allows us to ponder, how does this teaching resonate in my life? And it's not an intellectual asking, it's open-ended. It's allowing the answers to resonate with our experience, oftentimes taking the contemplation from the head into the heart. So how do we move from this thinking about things to actually feeling it? I want to give you an example. Guy Armstrong compares this to a pineapple. How would we describe a pineapple? Spiky, brownish fruit with a crown of hard green leaves? Well, to truly experience the pineapple, we need to go beneath the outward appearance and eat the juicy fruit. So when we're moving this inquiry from how do you think about it to how does it feel, we're eating the juicy fruit. And that's the heartfelt inquiry. So I'm going to invite us into a practice to try this on. And this may sound familiar. I'm very fond of a practice that takes the Four Noble Truths and applies them to work with some of the feelings that we might have. Some distress that we might be feeling. You might, bring to mind, some of us are fearful or affected by the rapid change in our public policies or a sense of chaos. Perhaps you can think of an example that's of something that's just difficult for you. And so I'm going to ask us to call upon some of the teachings and try to apply them in our lives. We understand intellectually, many of us are familiar with the Four Noble Truths that tell us that there's suffering, there's a cause of suffering, the grasping and clinging to it. There's an end to suffering if we let go of the clinging, and there's a path to freedom. But how does that help me work with the distress or suffering that's happening in my life right now? Well, we're going to walk through 4 inquiries that Thanissaro Bhikkhu shared, Heather Karp shared with me, and we're going to use those to guide us through this contemplation. So just bringing to mind that example of something that may be difficult for you in our current state of affairs. And it may feel like a worry or a sadness or anger. And if we want to contemplate this in practice, we can intentionally steer our practice to investigate how these truths play out in our lives. So, thinking of this difficulty, we notice how this concern lands in the body, felt sense of it, the feelings that might start to emerge, perhaps fear or anger or sadness. And we know this as suffering, the first noble truth. So the inquiry is, am I experiencing stress or distress or suffering? And if so, how does it feel in this heart, in this body, in this mind? How am I experiencing this distress? And the second truth, the cause of suffering. The inquiry is, what am I holding on to? Or is there something I'm wanting or not wanting? Really wanting things to be different than the way they are. The cause of suffering can be this clinging, grasping, and really wanting things to be different than the way they are. Feeling how that feels. And the third truth, there's an end to suffering. And we inquire, can I relax this grip? Can I relax this clinging, even just a little? Or maybe a lot? Just intend to relax this grip. And the fourth truth is there's a path to liberation. Our inquiry is, what would help? What would help? Would it help to know that we're not alone? To take care of ourselves, self-care. Would it help to take some action? I'm just sitting with this. And we might ask, does it feel as though there's some wisdom there about how to proceed that I didn't tap into when I had my angry or fearful thought? Just noticing how that was, if experiencing these 4 steps helped us feel how these truths might play out in our difficult times. So this applying the teachings to our experience requires a willingness to sit with our distress and understand its source. And the capacity or willingness to try to embody this distress and find a way out of suffering and letting go of our grasping. But this type of wisdom isn't something that we get from Dharma books. Heartfelt inquiry really taps into our deepest source of wisdom, which is the innate wisdom from within us. We're asking ourselves, communicating with ourselves about what is known in there. I'm going to share a poem from Rumi, which may be familiar to you. It's called Two Kinds of Intelligence. There are 2 kinds of intelligence. One acquired as a child in school memorizes facts and concepts from books and from what the teacher says. Collecting information from the traditional sciences as well as from the new sciences. With such intelligence, you rise in the world. You get ranked ahead or behind others in regard to your competence in retaining information. You stroll with this intelligence in and out of fields of knowledge, getting always more marks on your preserving tablets. There's another kind of tablet, one already completed and preserved inside you. A spring overflowing its spring box. A freshness in the center of the chest. This other intelligence does not turn yellow or stagnate. It's fluid, and it doesn't move from outside to inside the conduits of plumbing learning. This second knowing is a fountainhead from within you, moving out. So it's this intelligence from within that we unearth with our heartfelt inquiry. And we grow to trust this intrinsic wisdom because it feels real and true and authentic to our lives. So I just want to note that this inquiry helps us at each stage of the meditation practice. You know, when we're, as I mentioned, as we're settling in with our intention, as we focus our intention on an anchor, or just as we inquire about what we're noticing. It can give the mind a place to inhabit until we become still. And then once we are still, once we're more concentrated, we turn to our wisdom practices, the Vipassana practices. And here we might ask questions to explore the present moment awareness, to investigate. I love the way the poet David Whyte writes about asking beautiful questions. He says, you don't ask a beautiful question with your strategic mind. That's needed. But the last place it gets articulated, I'm sorry. You ask it with your body. So you ask beautiful questions with your body. You ask it with your longing. And you can ask a beautiful question in complete silence with no verbalization whatsoever, just in the way you're paying attention. So here, as we're more focused, we may just intentionally pay attention to what's arising, to what's calling for our attention. And here I want to note that often what's calling for our attention are the things that are distracting us or bothering us. And because of this, Lama Willa Blythe Baker often talks about how essential it is that we have a shadow practice, the ability to work with difficulty, and having a practice that allows us to do that. We can do that in the way we did in our meditation, a practice called focusing. It's also very similar to a practice that many of us are familiar with, the acronym RAIN, where you recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture what's coming up. We can investigate by looking at the beliefs that limit us. We can ask, what am I believing? And is it true? And what's it like to live with this belief? And what would it be like to let go of a belief that something is wrong with us or that we're not enough? So looking into this shadow practice to help us look at what's below the line that maybe we're not aware of. And when we do this, we need to always be ready to show ourselves some self-compassion. To ask ourselves, does it feel okay to be with this now? To ask ourselves what's needed and how can I be a friend to myself? We use inquiry to open us to natural awareness, to think big of who is aware, or can I feel this awareness? It's right here and present. It opens our eyes, opens our awareness. And we can use inquiry to ask what Gil Fronsdal calls the wisdom questions. To ask ourselves, who am I when there's no problem to solve? Or how do my words and actions reflect my intentions? How do they reflect my view of the world? So inquiry helps us to focus in the places we want to grow. And I have, Brianna has been kind enough to share in the chat a list of sample questions that I pulled together so you wouldn't feel as though you had to write down anything that rang true. But I want you to look at it as a list that you can take a look at and set aside or throw in the trash. These are questions, some questions that I like. But the questions that enrich our practice are unique to each of us. You know, Pat Coffey always says that we are contemplative artists, and we each need to feel into the heartfelt inquiries that enliven us and release that fountainhead of innate wisdom, our own beautiful questions. So I will finish up before asking us to do some sharing about our beautiful questions, the ones we love, by sharing with you a recent experience that I had with using these inquiries to look into a teaching that I was wanting to learn more from, dig into, to internalize. So recently, reading a teaching from Soni Rinpoche, he writes in Fearless Simplicity that all practice should be motivated by efforts to do two things: to purify our own hearts and minds, but also a sincere desire to benefit all beings. So I read that and it got me questioning, how deeply do I really feel and live from that sense of feeling interconnected with all beings? For instance, when I share the merits of practice with all sentient beings everywhere without exception, or when I do a loving kindness or a metta practice, is it a rote practice where I'm saying the words, or can I really feel that connection with all beings? So I made an intention to do a heartfelt inquiry into how I included that sense of interconnection in each part of my practice. When I set my intention, might it be an intention that wasn't just for me, but for cared for all beings? When I inquired into my feelings, might I take care to notice not only my feelings, but to care about those others who suffer in this way? When I shared the merits of the practice, could I feel inside a heartfelt connection and compassion for those I was sharing my intentions with? Could I feel how broadly this connection extended? How far could I radiate this goodwill? And it also made me ask, how do my words and actions reflect a commitment to living for the benefit of all beings? What is wise action? What's wise speech in this troubled moment? So my intention has brought me to a place where I'm noticing, thinking about this each time I sit, and a really remarkable shift in my focus has occurred because of paying attention. So just wanted to share that as an example of, I think, how inquiry can move us. Another quote from David White: "The ability to ask beautiful questions, often in very unbeautiful moments, is one of the great disciplines of a human life. And a beautiful question starts to shape your identity as much by asking it as it does by having it answered. You just have to keep asking, and before you know it, you'll find yourself actually shaping a different life, meeting different people, finding conversations that are leading you in those directions that you wouldn't even have seen before." So inquiry and beautiful questions can be an opening to shifting our attention and to shifting our view. So I'm going to stop talking there. And what I'd love to do is to take a little time and invite all of us to talk to one another. I have a couple of inquiries I'd like you to consider. And what we will do is Brianna is going to break us out into groups of 3 or 4. And you have the option of sitting it out and you're remaining in the big room so that when we come back together and gather our wisdom, you can hear that. Or you can take a break. But I invite you to consider going into a small group and considering this a heartfelt inquiry, which requires really being open to what's arising in you, respecting what's coming up, perhaps honoring how vulnerable you care to be when you share, and allowing everyone to just be the way they are. And to perhaps deeply just touch into the fact that when we sit and share in this way, that we are really in the presence of a compassionate witness, that we are holding a space for one another to be heard. So when we get in these small groups, we'll each have about 3 to 4 minutes to share your answers to questions, listen to each person, and then if there's a little extra time, you can just discuss. And here are a couple of questions to ponder. So I would ask, what inquiries or wisdom questions do you find fruitful in your practice? What questions are fruitful for you when you practice? You may have some great ones that haven't come up. What questions might help you check with that wisdom within? Tap into that wisdom within. Or perhaps you can choose which one you want to address. What questions could support you in these difficult times? I want to thank you for this evening together. I've enjoyed it. I wasn't excited about being just on Zoom, and but yet your faces are right there, and it's felt wonderful. So thank you for being here. Good night, all.
Thank you all.
Thank
you. Thanks,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Marylouise. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Marylouise.
Good to be here.